Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. Gain valuable insights by attending the podcast, then complete the assessment test to download your certificate. To do this, follow these simple steps. Click on the link in your description to access the session. Create a free account and attend the podcast. After the podcast, take the assessment test and download your certificate. It's easy, and it's free. We highly recommend checking out our subscription. Let's get started.
So when I shift houses, there is always this part wherein there is people who come in and they clean up and the movers and packers and all that and everything. And there is a particular mover and packer whose service I really like. Right? I liked his service. And in fact, I ended up referring him to so many other people as well that, I have used other movers and packers as well. But that was that one particular person that I liked. Now, obviously, he cannot be everywhere. But whenever, there's somebody who is looking, if somebody were to reach out to me, I'm like, hey, if you're looking for, this kind of a service, this is the guy that you got to go to.
And I'll bet you can go through. So the first step, I bet he did a really good job. The quality was there, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I bet the experience was fairly pleasant. Here's an experience of moving and packing, usually super stressful, super unpleasant experience, but he made it fairly pleasant and reasonably enjoyable. Certainly felt a lot better than it would have been otherwise. So you get the
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm willing to bet you clicked with him at some level. There were maybe him or some people who worked with him. There was like a personal connection. So that's really what pushes it over the line. That's what creates the loyalty, is a sense of personal connection.
Yeah. It just so happened that like I said, it was an afterthought, and I was like, wow, I didn't quite realize that. I mean, there are things that we could be referring even Welcome everyone to another edition of your favorite podcast we're trying to figure out. I'm your host Saul, and today we are diving into something that affects literally everyone, whether you're a diehard Apple fan, a Nike loyalist, or just can't quit scrolling TikTok. We're talking about brand love, why we connect with brands the same way we connect with people. And with me today is Dr. Aaron Ahuvia, the world leading expert on this very topic. He's a professor of marketing, a global speaker, and the guy who literally wrote the book on brand love. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Saul, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So you were the first person to study brand love, and that's wild. What got you into this space?
It's actually a little bit of a funny story. I was a PhD student at Northwestern, the Kellogg School in marketing, and I was working with Professor Philip Kotler, who some people will have heard of. He's a very famous guy. And he, long story short, he thinks everything is marketing. And he was talking about how dating is marketing, because you're marketing yourself to this other person. And this was way back when dating services were just starting to be a thing. So to make a long story short, I ended up doing this research with the Professor Mara Edelman on dating services, and that went really well. And in order to do that research, I needed to study the psychology of love, because I was trying to figure out, what made dates successful and what made people attracted to each other and how that all worked. And I thought that was really interesting. I got to tell you, the psychology of love and dating is a little more interesting than marketing. So it was a lot of fun to do that research. Then I'd spent a couple of years though working on that, and when I had to come up with something for my dissertation, I thought, wow, I don't want to get rid of all this investment that I have. I've become this huge expert on the psychology of love. So what can I do with this? I thought, well, people talk. I mean, there's a ton of literature out there about why people want products or are attracted to products or pay for products, right? But there's all this new research. At that time, there was this flood of new research on love. And nobody had really taken that research on love and applied it to why we are interested in certain types of products or brands. So, well, okay, I'll take a flyer on this. And I started doing this work, and it really took off a little while later with a woman named Barbara Carroll. So first I published some work on my own, and she saw that and approached me, and then we ended up publishing a scale that was brand love. And it wasn't the first time the word brand love had ever been used. There were occasional uses, before that, but it really wasn't in wide use at that point. So after that paper, the term sort of caught on. And now, if you look, that was quite a few years ago. That was the late 80s, early 90s. But if you at Google Scholar and look up research, you'll find over 20,000 scientific studies that at least discuss brand love somehow. So it's become a very big topic.
Wow, this is great. And when we hear the word brand love, like when I heard it for the first time, before I even spoke to you, when I heard it for the first time, I thought, okay, so you're talking about loyalty. Like, I usually prefer Delta when I'm flying, or I prefer Coke over other cold drinks. But what you're saying is, it's way deeper than that, right? I mean, it's not just because I like it the way it is.
Right. Well, yes and no. So there's a lot of different words, and people, parse things in a lot of different ways. And very frequently things do overlap. So I think the way I think about love is I think about love as this fundamental psychological mechanism that evolved really not just in people, but in animals before we were ever human beings. And it's this very fundamental mechanism, and it is the basis for loyalty that comes out of being bonded to something, having an emotional commitment to that thing, which is it's different from loyalty and what marketers call behavioral loyalty, which is just I buy this thing over and over again. Well, you can buy it over and over again just because it's convenient or because you think it's the best deal. But the question is, if something else is on sale, if you see something that's a better deal, right? Do you feel an emotional connection to this thing that you'll resist the other? Or is it just, well, I buy it over and over again because it's the cheapest right now? So anytime that you've got that kind of emotional connection, that's what I call brand love, because it is rooted in this fundamental human mechanism that creates these kinds of emotional attachments.
Wow. I mean, when you're saying this, as you're saying this, there are some thoughts that are going into my mind, like especially when you said that, maybe you are liking a product because it's just convenient, but if something else was put on sale, are you really letting go of it? Are you feeling the same emotional connection to that product? The way you feel for product A, do you feel the same for product B? And that has got me thinking. I'm just going back into my mind. When was the last time I chose a different cold drink versus Coke? I haven't actually. I've never done it. But I mean, Coke is my example. I mean, my other example is also an iPhone. Like, when I'm using an iPhone, I've been using it for so long. It's not that I've not tried an Android. I have, but it's just that, if I'm not using an iPhone, I just feel dumb, So it's how it is. But, let's say I'm a founder or a marketer, right? And what do I need to understand about how brand love actually forms? Like, what are the triggers, towards for brand love to happen as a marketer, as a founder? What are the triggers that I need to know about?
Do you want to earn CPE credit? Take this course of MyCPE ONE to earn free credit. Click the link in the description to get started.
So the first trigger is just superior or superlative quality. So can't people sometimes come to me and they're like, oh, Dr. Love, come and, I've got this sort of mediocre parody product. Come and tell me your magic formula is going to get people to love my product. And that's really hard. A lot of times people will use the word love metaphorically. They don't literally mean they love something, but they'll use it as a superlative. And all it means is it's really good. So you see your friend and you go like, oh, I love your haircut. You don't love their haircut. You don't have any emotional attachment to their haircut. All you're saying is that's a really good haircut, right?
Yeah.
Well, if we use the word love to mean it's really good, that's a clue. And the clue is people are going to love something when it's really, really good. So the first step is it's got to be really high, high functionality, high quality, whatever it is, and offer the customer something special. And if you're not doing that, go back to the first base and make sure you get that set up. That said, the biggest mistake that companies make, I think, is that because quality is so important, they think it's everything. So, well, if I can get, if in order to get to love, I've got to get to say, 8 on a 10-point scale. If quality will get me up to 6 on that scale, more quality will get me to 8 or 9 or 10 on that scale. And it won't, right? Quality may get you to 6, but you've got to do other things to get past that. And what they keep doing is they keep like doubling down. It's like, we just got to make it better. We got to communicate that it's better. We got to make it better. And you sort of hit a wall at a certain point. And a lot of companies do that. And they're wondering, why are we hitting this wall? Why can't we move forward? So if that's where you are, then the next step is customer experience.
Okay.
Got to look at customer experience. When people go on a date and you come back from like you come back from a date, right? The sense that you are falling in love with that person that you've dated is overwhelmingly related to simply how good of an experience did you have on that date. Nobody ever says, oh, I went on this date, it was boring, conversation was slow, I felt unhappy and awkward and unpleasant the whole time. This is the person I'm going to marry. Nobody says that, right?
Nobody does that.
Your sense of connection is all about what your lived, felt experience was in that interaction. And that's what people really mean by chemistry. All it really means is I had a really good time when I was with this person. So the next step is, what does it feel like to use the product or the brand? And in some cases, having it be really fun, exhilarating. So there's 2 sorts of good feelings that people get that are associated with love. One is this really high energy good feeling, like you're skiing or you're dancing at a party and it's really fun, exhilarating, and that's one. But also it could be the calm, relaxed, like, oh, I'm getting a massage, I'm in a sauna, I'm on the beach, right? That's very calm and low energy, but also extremely pleasant. Ideally, you can create something akin to one of those experiences. If you can't, and a lot of products, you're just never going to be able to do that. Like you're selling insurance. I don't know. Maybe someone smarter than me is going to come along and figure it out. But I think a lot of these products, having them be like a joyous experience is probably more than you can ask for. But at the very least, it should be pleasant and it should not be unpleasant. So you got to find all the pain points and get rid of those and make it a really pleasant experience. So that's the second step. And then the third step, I think I'm going to pause and let you get a word in here if you want to talk about either one of those first 2, because the third one is really where companies miss the mark and they don't get it. And it's going to be a long discussion. So if you have anything you want to chirp in here,
No, yeah, absolutely. Because
go on to step 3.
no, because you're talking about some really deep psychological stuff. This is something. If I had a brand, if I was a marketer, if I was a founder of a company, I don't really look into these facets at all. I remember, you also wrote something on this in the past about how consumers don't just love the products, they love what those products say about them. It's not just about the identity. Like, I guess that's what you're relating to, how it's making you feel. And that's that emotional connection that comes, right?
Right. And that's part of it. It's like how it makes you feel. A lot of times we will get to that. That's part of the third step.
There's also one more thing that is happening. All that is happening, right? All that is happening. But then you were also, you are able to hear me?
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I got a prompt that, the internet connection is bad. So I'm like, oh, wait. So it's all that. But then, you get the quality right. You know about how it makes how the customers feel about your product, how they're connecting into it. But, I would let you now talk about, that one thing that you're saying that, that's something that, companies really fail on. So I'll let you continue on it. But I just want to really tap into it that, it's psychological. When we spoke on this, even I went through a journey. In fact, even in this podcast, as we started, when we spoke about the product, that if there's product A because it's conveniently available to you, and product B, that is the closest competitor to product A, was available on sale, would you go for it? And it triggered a psychological response in my mind. It did, for a second, although it was just a thought exercise. It did trigger a psychological response. And this is something that you're not seeing it. As a customer, I'm probably seeing it, but as a marketeer, I'm not taking these factors into consideration in my strategies about my product or my service, whatever that is.
Right. Yeah. So the third part is, and here, most businesses have no idea that this is important. It's not on their radar at all. Most businesses do know that quality is important, and they're working on that. A lot of businesses, at least in theory, understand that customers' experience is important. They often just give it lip service. They don't really put a lot of effort into it as much as they should, but at least they'll sort of admit in theory that they think it's important.
Access latest and trending CPE courses with my CPE One Unlimited Access subscription. Subscribe now.
But for the third part, they've got no idea that this is important. And so the third part is brand personification. And to understand this, you've got to understand just a little bit. I'm going to get a little sciencey here for a second and talk about evolution. But our brain, mammal brains, evolved with a lot of processing capacity, a lot of brain matter, like physical brain. 80% of the brain is, the neocortex. And this evolved primarily for thinking about people. So for, guessing, why is this person doing it? What's this person's intentions? How does this person feel about me? Right? Some of that's relevant when you deal with an object. Objects don't have intentions. Objects don't feel a certain way about you.
Yeah.
This brain power is very expensive. I was flabbergasted to learn this, because I would have thought that your brain doesn't use a lot of calories. It doesn't seem like it does, but it actually uses over 20% of your daily calories go to your brain. So if there's a food shortage, having a big brain, you could literally starve to death and die because of the calories that your brain is consuming. So evolutionarily, we evolved not to waste those calories and to only devote those resources where you really need to devote them. And so the brain has a little filter in it, and it says, look, if it's an object, I'm not going to think about it this way. I'm not going to develop these emotional attachments to it. I'm just going to deal with it in a very pragmatic way. And as a result, all the kinds of emotional attachments that we're talking about here, your brain really tries to reserve those only for people, which is why most of the time when we think about brands and objects, we actually aren't that emotionally attached to them.
Yeah.
And why, if we treat a person in a way that has no emotional connection, we say we're objectifying that person. We're treating them as if they were an object, which kind of gets at this idea that intuitively we realize, hey, your brain treats objects really differently from the way it treats people. Right? So if you want people to really love the brand, you have to get them to start thinking about the brand as if it was a person. And that's going to get the brain to engage these various mechanisms of emotional attachment that will make brand love possible. And so then there's three ways that you can get the brain to start thinking about the brand as if it's a person. The first is anthropomorphism. So
Okay.
anthropomorphism, a very long word, it just means the product either looks like a person or acts like a person or talks like a person. So Siri, all these, things that you have a conversation with, these AI bots, they're very anthropomorphic. They talk to you like there's a person. A lot of products, like a car, the headlights look like eyes and the grill kind of looks like looks like a person. And so there's a great deal of research that when a product physically kind of looks like a person or acts like a person, this triggers the little switch in your brain that says, hey, this is a person. Even though consciously you know it's not a person, unconsciously your brain starts treating it like a person. And
Interesting.
So brand love is actually usually higher for products that have this quality of physically looking like a person, because it trigger your brain to start thinking about it in these ways. So that's one way to do it, but that's not the most common way. Because most products that people love don't actually, look like people or talk to them. So the next most common way is to get people to associate the brand with a person. So this could be a spokesperson for the brand. It could be someone in advertising. It could be the founder. It could also be someone they actually meet, like a service person that they interact with or a salesperson that they interact with. In business to business marketing, people are, companies are famously non-attached. In theory, a business buyer is supposed to be perfectly rational and just looking for the best deal.
Yes.
But people in business to business marketing usually understand that to the extent that there's any kind of emotional attachment there, it's because there's a personal connection, because person at the selling company has gotten to know person at the buying company, and those two humans have a relationship with each other. And that's why the selling company has these budgets for their sales force where they can take other people out to dinner, take them to a sporting event, right? It's to create that social relationship so that that's what builds the loyalty, right? So it can be then a relationship to like an actual human being that you know at the company, or it could be a relationship to, Flo, the character for the insurance company, or, something like this, or for Steve Jobs at Apple. But there's some sort of a connection to a person that you associate with the brand. And that triggers the brain. You start thinking about the brand in a human way. So that's a whole like family of strategies from that.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Then the third one, and this is what you mentioned before, and this really has to happen. Whatever else happens in brand love, this always has to happen. Is that the consumer starts to see the brand as part of their own identity. And they start to see it as part of who they are.
Right.
And there's a lot of different ways that this can happen. It happens sometimes if you just use it a lot. Just the sheer frequency of like interacting with this, it starts to kind of rub off on you and you guys to see it as part of your identity. It happens in part, and you mentioned this earlier, it happens if you really enjoy it. A lot of times if we enjoy using a product, we think that's a signal Like the fact that I really enjoy this is a signal that it's right for me at an
Mm-hmm.
emotional level. And so
Yeah.
we take that as a clue, and then we make it part of our identity because it sort of feels like it really fits us. It can also
Yes.
happen through values. Like if a company expresses values, political or social or ecological or other kinds of values that the customers feel strongly about, that also builds this kind of connection.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
feels it represents me. It says something deep about who I am. So there's all these different ways that people create the sense that the brand or the product is part of their own sense of identity, sense of self. And that really cements things. So we've got
Interesting.
our sort of 3 steps: 1, quality; 2, customer experience; and then 3, brand personification. And the last one itself has 3 subparts. The first is, how do you get people to think about your brand as a person? Well, it might look or act like a person. That's anthropomorphism. It might be connected to a person, like a company salesperson or service person or owner or founder, or it might be connected to the person themselves, part of their
Yes.
identity. And
Yeah.
a lot of times you get all of that happening at once, and that's what really creates brand love.
You know, this was like an afterthought when we had last spoken about this podcast. When we were discussing about this podcast, this was more of like an afterthought. And I was like, this was, so I was looking at, because even the conversation that we had, I was thinking on a lot of things about brand love, and I was looking, okay, why am I always on an iPhone? Why is it this, that? Why is that? Why is that? Those questions had already started to happen. And then I'm like, is it just the products, or is there a specific service as well that I feel affected to?
Yeah.
Because the product is something I see, I feel, and I have got that thing, whatever may have been the reason why I have gotten associated with the product, where I have that love for the product. Is there a specific service? And if it is, why?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really seeing something when there's a
Love with
particular
anything?
service that's like, yeah.
Were there any
So,
services that you really feel connected to?
I mean, it was very weird when I came to know, because so when I shift houses, there is always this part wherein there is people who come in and they clean up, and the movers and packers and all that and everything. And there is a particular mover and packer whose service I really like,
Huh.
right? I liked his service, and in fact, I ended up referring him to so many other people as well. That you know, I have used other movers and packers as well, but that was that one particular person that I liked. Now, obviously, he cannot be everywhere, but whenever there's somebody who is looking, if somebody were to reach out to me, I'm like, hey, if you're looking for this kind of a service, this is the guy that you gotta go to.
And I'll bet you can go through. So the first step, I bet he did a really good job. The quality was there, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I bet the experience was fairly pleasant. Here's an experience of moving and packing, usually super stressful, super unpleasant experience, but he made it fairly pleasant and reasonably enjoyable. Certainly felt a lot better than it would have been otherwise. So you get the
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm willing to bet you clicked with him at some level. There were maybe him or some people who worked with him. There was like a personal connection. So that's really what pushes it over the line. That's what creates the loyalty, is the sense of personal connection.
Yeah. Yeah. It just so happened that I was just, like I said, it was an afterthought, and I was like, wow, I didn't quite realize that. I mean, there are things that we could be referring even I don't know, like services related to professional things. Like, if at all you wanted to go for upskilling, you're like, hey, I would always recommend you to go for LinkedIn Learning or something, because that's something that I really like. I'm not saying it personally, but that's also a service. It's something. It's a product. It's a service provided as a product. Productization of a service. Those are the concepts that are coming in the market today. And I guess somewhere, I think it's because of the brand love concept. Because earlier it was service and product by product, but today we are seeing productization of services. Like, even if I were to talk about CPAs, they're not just providing tax advisory, they are providing it as a product. Like, you buy this product in which I will do your tax returns, plus I will also do quarterly meetup calls, wherein I'll be providing you advisory on all your investments and where we are, and the financial planning I will include that as well. So it's now become like a product that in this you will get 4 calls of the entire year, plus you'll get your tax returns done, plus for your family and all that. I mean, different products, different service offerings, all that. So, and somewhere, I guess, like all these elements, the quality and all that, and that's why they're successful. The reason why it's continuing to exist in the market is because these qualities are there in those services. We're just not seeing it. We just don't realize it, rather, but it's there. How you just broke it down. The moment I told you about a service, you were able to break it down. And as you say it, I'm agreeing to all of that, because that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Which is proof, which is proof of exactly what you have researched and done, But now, where we are today, there is something that has come in the market that I am so confused what's going to happen now. Artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
All right. Plus social media and the way it is structured and all these algorithms, which is creating that. I don't know, I'm not a there's a reason I'm not on social media. I hate social media because I think it has become too biased, too prejudiced. It's making me take my will away of my will to my freedom to choose, my freedom to like what I like, because I think it's driving it, and AI is now also making it too much robotic. I mean, that's my opinion. That's my perspective. But how are for you who has been into this industry, and I'm sure like with a lot of people that you speak to, you have got these social media and influencers and AI bots coming in and taking over a lot of things. How are these things changing the way we are relating to brands?
Yeah. So I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to be huge. One of the main ways I anticipate this is going to function is through AI powered agents, virtual agents. So I imagine in the future, when you go to Amazon or someplace like this, instead of just seeing the screen with a whole bunch of choices and visual stuff on there, Alexa will be there, and Alexa will say, "Hey, Saul, how are you today?" And you'll say, "Good." She'll say, "What are you looking for?" And you'll say, "I'm looking for like a new can opener." And she'll say, "Oh yeah, last time you were here, you got that soda stream to making seltzer water, and it was this beautiful teal blue. Do you want something that's going to match that teal blue from the soda stream that you got before?" And right, and so this AI agent is going to know like who you are, the kind of thing you like, everything you've bought before, what your budget is, right? And they're really going to be able to help you very quickly find, what you're looking for, and help you get the best price, perhaps, or the best price from Amazon's perspective, perhaps. It might not be the same thing. So there's going to be sort of that functional side to it, but you'll recall that the big missing piece for a lot of brands in creating brand love is this personification. Getting to see the brand as a person. Well, now you're going to be interacting with this. This is going to be an avatar. Alexa's going to look like something. You're going to talk with Alexa. That's going to create a tremendous sense of personal connection. The same way if you ask people, what brands or businesses they feel the strongest connection to, a lot of times they don't even think about this. They think about it first, like big companies. You say, "Well, do you get your haircut someplace?" They're like, "Oh yeah, I go to the same person every time to get my haircut." And I wasn't thinking about that, but yeah, I suppose I actually feel something because that's a human being. I feel a connection to that person, right? So people will start to develop that kind of personal loyalty to these AI agents. And that's going to be really good for companies. It could be not so good for consumers. There's a risk that consumers might get taken advantage of in those kinds of relationships, which is something that I'm concerned about. But it's really going to be, from the company's perspective, extremely powerful. And the key here is that the way consumers will relate to that sort of AI agent, like that Alexa agent, is going to be part way between the way they deal with a real person and the way they deal with an object. So your brain at a conscious level will know it's not a real person. And that has some impact on your behavior. But
Yeah.
at an unconscious level, your brain does not know this is not a real person.
Yes.
And you react emotionally to it. We know this from a lot of research on anthropomorphism. People respond emotionally as if it was a real person.
Yes.
And so you'll get very sucked into the sense of relationship. And right now, like, I talk to people and they're like, oh, I wouldn't do that. That wouldn't happen to me, right? There's a lot of denial. I'm a rational person. But the research shows that when you get people to have these interactions, they do get sucked in. And
They
so
do.
it will happen to all of us. Or maybe not all of us, but most of us will get, kind of sucked into this kind of relationship. And so that's going to create much higher levels of brand love than we've seen in the past. It's a huge opportunity for businesses.
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine. Look, it feels like, I told you the reason why I'm not on social media. Together with the biasness, there's also the privacy concern that I think it's knowing everything about me, and then it's able to suggest me things that I like and dislike and everything. But eventually, I guess that's how we all want it. We want to be comfortable. Like when I go to shower, I want the water to be at that particular temperature every time. When I go to office, I want to go in that. If I had cars to choose from, I would probably be choosing that particular car, and I'll be probably taking that particular route to get to that particular place. And if I had to pick up coffee along the way, if I had 10 shops, I would be probably picking coffee from that particular place. And I would want that all thing to happen. Like, and eventually that's how it's going to happen. Like, I don't know, probably I would also know that maybe I had skipped breakfast before I left for work. So while I might be, like required to go to that particular coffee place and pick up some donuts and everything, I might also say that together with donuts, you probably might also want to pick up this because you skipped your breakfast. So you probably want to add some additional calories to your day. I don't know. Maybe that's what's going to happen. But I mean, the way you're saying it, I mean, that personification is eventually going to happen, right? And I would want that rather than me to be becoming so much dependent on myself. If at all there's somebody who can probably remember all those things and just provide me that comfortable experiences so my life is better, I have to use lesser of my brain power from the 20% allocated from my daily calorie intake for my brain to function. If some of it can be taken care by AI, nothing like it. I can probably use that for something else.
Yeah. So I sort of anticipate that hopefully people will get AI agents that will be looking really from their interest. So I gave the example before of going to Amazon and you interact with Alexa and you build this relationship. And I think that'll happen. But I think one solution from the consumer's perspective is to have your own AI agent. You can call it, Sam, right? And Sam is really looking out for you, not for Amazon. And so
Yes.
Sam, go buy me a can opener. And now Sam looks on Amazon, looks at other sellers, finds the best can openers for you, brings you a couple choices, and does this in a way that's much better. I mean, you can do this right now on Google Shopping. I do it all the time. but it is still, it doesn't screen things out in the same way. It doesn't work for you necessarily, right? So you'd have something that really is just working for you. It's got only your interest at heart. And in that case, you wouldn't necessarily be forming a relationship with Alexa because you're not really ever going to Amazon website yourself. You're out this agent. So from the consumer welfare point of view, I think that's one way that we could consumers could level the playing field a little bit in future interactions with companies.
So if I understand it right, the way you're seeing it is like, with the advent of AI and everything, we're looking at brand love to become more immersive, or I don't know, I would probably call it manipulative, but
yeah, I think it'll become much more intense. It'll be more immersive.
Yeah.
Because it will be based in these parasocial relationships with AI agents that already, people create these relationships and lots of people fall in love with their AI chatbots.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, that you must be like, it's only crazy people who do that. And right now, yeah, a lot of times it is the really extreme examples are people who often have like some sort of a psychological wound that makes it difficult for them to form relationships with people. But as things go on, we're going to move well beyond that.
Absolutely. And would it be fair to say that, companies that don't figure this out will fall behind? Like, this is no longer like a nice to have, it's like a business survival issue?
It depends on the company. I mean, we're not quite there yet. Like right now, we all have had this experience, right?
Yeah.
Call up the airline or the cable company or your phone company, and you get the computerized agent that's supposed to help you with your problem. And it is just a nightmare. I always end up screaming into my phone, get me a person. I can't talk to you anymore. And I hate it. And I was having problems with my cable, and every time I would phone the company, to fix the internet, it was just like they would be like, do this. I'm like, I've done those things 6 times. I don't want to do them again and again and again. They really made it awful. So
well, I can tell you one thing for sure, for all the people who are listening into this podcast, I bet they have never come across a cable subscription service that they really love because of their awesome customer service. I mean, cable companies are so infamous for the customer service.
Oh my God, it's horrible, right? So there's, so right now the technology isn't there yet.
Yes.
But I think it's improving very fast.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be very curious to see how long it is before you phone up the cable company and the computer answers, and it's not a terrible experience. It actually can. And it doesn't have a list of like, here's 5 problems I can solve. And if your problem isn't on that list of 5 problems, you are out of luck, bucko. You can, not only are you out of luck, but I'm going to make you listen to my list of 5 problems every time you call. And and if your problem is number 6, I'm just going to make you choose one of those 5. That doesn't matter. That's not your problem. You've got to choose one of those, and then you have to hear about. So it's not.
If it's not one of these 5, it's not a problem.
Not a problem. That's it, right? It's not going to do that. It'll listen to your problem. It doesn't matter what your problem is. It'll understand it. It'll give you the accurate information. It will be able to change things on their end and make adjustments. And all of a sudden, you're not going to hate that anymore. So, but right now we're not there. So it's the question is like, our company's going to fall behind. I think there's still time.
Yes.
But when it gets better, if you're not there as when it hits that point where it's no longer a hellish experience, it starts to be a positive experience, you better be on board at that point.
Absolutely. So I know there's so much that we can talk about. We can kind of keep on going forever with this, but let's bring it home. Some quick questions. What's one thing any business can do tomorrow to start building brand love?
I would say customer experience and then
Right.
personification. So there's two things, but in that order: customer experience, make sure that's a good experience, and then work on the personification.
All right, great. And where can our listeners find more about your work, your talks, or your book?
Go to my website, Dr. Brand Love, so drbrandlove.com. Or you can just Google me, Aaron Ahuvia. I should show up.
All right, that's great. That's great. Dr. Aaron, thank you so much for being here. This podcast has been a masterclass, right? So thank you so much for sharing your insights. And to those who are listening in, if you love this episode, see what I said there? I said the word love. Go ahead and subscribe, drop a comment, and share it with your team. So we'll see you next time on We're Trying to Figure Out, where we are just trying to figure everything out. So stay strong and keep innovating in everything that you do. Cheers.
Bye now.
Bye.
Access latest and trending CPE courses with my CPE One Unlimited Access subscription. Subscribe now.